Welcome to our city council meeting. We appreciate all of you being here. We do have agendas on the two side tables, so there's probably more of you than there are agendas here tonight, but we'll get started right on. I think you're all high in the agenda anyways. Agenda item 1 is a roll call by our clerk.
Mr. Fry,
Here.
Mr. Hanson,
Here.
Mr. Hanum,
Here.
Mr. McCann,
Here.
Mr. Richardson,
Mr. Richardson is excused.
Ms. Stowe,
Here.
Mrs. Westfall.
Here.
6 members of city council are present, therefore a quorum does exist. Again, welcome to all of you, and I invite you to join us in our Pledge of Allegiance this evening, led by Ms. Stowe.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda item 3 is additions to the agenda, and I do have a couple of items to add. As 5A, I would like to add a fire department update by Chief Ram. And as agenda item 14A, a request that city council schedule a committee of the whole meeting to further discuss the TIF. Mr. Fry.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Members of City Council, any additional items or changes? Hearing none, Mr. Sanford.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Schroyer. Chief Snorer. Mr. Aller. And Mrs. Brining.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and our agenda is approved for this evening. And then approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting on March 7th. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move approval of the meeting minutes for the council meeting of March 7th, 2022 as submitted.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the council meeting minutes of March 7th, 2022 is submitted. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and those meeting minutes are approved as submitted. Agenda item 5 is one of the best parts of our meetings, and that's when we get to recognize state champions. Come out there. If you come up here, it'll make a better photo op. Come on up here. Gather around me on both sides. Don't forget the hardware.
Oh, how fun is that? Yeah, that's awesome.
All wearing two medals indicating state championship. I have a proclamation here out of the office of the mayor. I'll read it for you. Whereas the Ohio Association of Secondary School Administrators 30th Annual Cheer and Dance State Championships were held in Columbus, Ohio, February 26th and 27th, 2002. Whereas Sylvania Southview Couperettes competitive and performance danced their way to state championship with first in large jazz, first in large pomp. Whereas the state champion numbers are Stoll, Ellie Sharp, Lisa Bell, Carly Nussbaum, Ashley Welch, Morgan Kwiatkowski, Ella Russin, Paige Britton, Allie Friels, Avery O'Loughlin, Sophie Goulding, Samantha Sobrist, and Allison Hood, led by coaches Lauren Gant Wilson, Emily Cruz. Now, therefore, I, Craig A. Stowe, Mayor, do hereby proclaim today, Monday, March 21st, 2022, as Southview Cougarettes Day in the city of Sylvania. We don't get to recognize state champions. This is quite an honor for you to come in with two. That's terrific.
Very short.
We're going to have the coaches come in. Coaches get ready. 33. Sherry's trying to get the right angle back.
All right, leg kicks on 3.
That's terrific. Please come back next year.
Very fun. It is fun for those. Double.
Hardware.
I used to have to do that with Katie when she was in cheerleading, but he had to go to the Board of Education.
Good to see you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Exactly. That's good for me. I must not have started it. I thought I did. Oops. Oh well.
All right, that was terrific and exciting. And we'll move on to the almost equally exciting Chief Ram.
Tough act to follow, Chief.
Certainly don't look as beautiful as those young ladies either, so. Thank you, for a couple minutes. Over the weekend at the expo, I had spoken with Mr. McCann and Mrs. Westfall, and I just I've been gone. I'm back full from my knee surgery, so I kind of wanted to give you guys a little update. I'm very proud of the guys and gals that, really took my job and ran with it. Very happy that those type of people that I could be on for a couple of days and I was able to rehab. And after talking to Mr. McCann, I know that there's been a lot of stuff in the paper from trustee meetings over the last couple of months, and I wanted you guys to hear it from me what's going on. Just like everybody else, we're having trouble with our purchases. In December of 2020, I ordered an ambulance and an engine, and neither one are here yet. Told October, November, possibly. So when I looked out and did my replacement schedule with the latest levy, had to take all my replacement stuff and kind of cram it in because we were told 3 years out for another engine. So the latest order for an ambulance and an engine is to put us in line for 3 years from now. It looks like we're spending money, but I actually am able to do purchases on them. So I know you guys will probably, or could get some questions out in public, and I didn't want you, saying that we're spending money like drunken sailors, but really been really tough. Chief Nye's been working real hard on it while I was gone. I did come in and sit in on a couple meetings, but if we didn't get in the rounds now, we'd be in some serious hurt, because if some of you probably don't remember, but chief, a couple from before me ordered 3 engines and a ladder truck at the exact same time. No way in today we could do 3 $800,000 engines and a $1.7 million ladder truck. We all know that's not possible. So I sat down with Oliver and Chris, and we kind of crunched and put things together. And if we didn't get in line now for them, I don't know when we would. So our mechanics are doing a great job with what we do have. However, we do have some duct tape, and some of them, unfortunately, when he bought those 3, those weren't the best. So we're making do with it. Run volume's up. That was one thing. Over the weekend, people kept saying, boy, you're going by my house even more. And I put my finger on it. I know we're an aging population. We have a few nursing facilities in our area, so our run volume is up. Thank God, not fires. So I'm open for questions. I just wanted to make sure you guys, after talking with us all, I wanted to make sure everybody heard where, kind of some of the struggles we're having right now. Manpower-wise, I'm down 4 people right now. We are in the process. My recruiting team was at OU, Hocking, one of the other ones over this past and before for their job fairs. Hitting them hard. It's just this industry working. Young kids like me, I was 5 years old, and all I could think about doing was being a fireman. They're not out there. Having to be out there pushing on doors and talking to parents. I think telling parents that jobs is our job with that. We're in the process right now. I think there was 72 people on our list when we pulled it today. I don't know how many passed, how many didn't pass, but pulled it off the National Testing Network testing. Hopefully we can find 4 really good candidates. Our last 6 just got through their first year. I had 3 of them's interviews today, and boy, I'll tell you, I'd take 2 more. Last 6. So when people say there's not good kids out there, hard to. Once you get them, you got to keep them. So I talked to all 3 of them today. I said, I'll sign your paper for your 1 year, but you got to stay. You're not leaving. Questions for me?
Chief, you mentioned the lease purchase. Is that a $0 buyout at the end?
Sure.
How long is the lease?
For engines, 5, ambulance 5, 7 on the engine. We've also priced out a ladder truck because that big thing he bought is coming up on 12 years old. So that's going to need to be replaced, and if it's taken 3 years to really ask how long it's going to build a ladder truck. We're going to baby that thing, do everything we can to keep that thing in service. And the latest lease I looked at, that was somewhere between, that just scares me. Awful long time. I don't know. I guess we'll look at that when we get to it. Obviously, we're not going to have, if it's 1.7 to replace it now, 3-4 years from now, I'm not sure what it's cost.
Right.
And I'm done February of 2025. I'd like to have that done for you all before I leave.
Chief, I've got a quick question
Yes,
for you. You did mention that the runs are up,
Yes.
which seems to be kind of an ongoing common thread. Do you think any of that had to do with COVID, people just being home more? I mean, were you able to measure anything different from that perspective, and did that impact you in any different
To
ways?
be honest, during the height of it, our run volume dropped. And I think when I looked at that, what it was to me was, I didn't want to sit next to you in the ER if I knew you might have COVID, and I didn't. So those people that would make that 911 call normally weren't making it. And then not only that, there wasn't as many cars and stuff on the road, but now everybody's back to full-blown everything. So, and it's been all kinds of things. Actually, we've transported my mom 4 times in the last month. My mom's not very well to a hospital right now. So, like I said, we have a population. I really think it's that. And, we still have drug overdoses, still have the suicides, we still have all those type of things, heart attacks, strokes, all that still. Well, those didn't go away just because the COVID went away, so that's what I would think that it's pertaining to. And when I go to the Chiefs conferences, our world is upset.
I wanted to thank you for sharing with me at the expo and then coming back in today to share with the rest. So, and thank you for your service.
After we talk, I went, well, I've been there for a while, maybe it would at least open the floor for questions. Or while I was gone, there were some questions they were asking. Mark, is there anything?
No, thank you. I kind of echo what McCann said. I mean, I appreciate your service and really appreciate the update you came in to give us.
Glad you're back.
Thanks, Doug. You know what? The house arrest was. No, because I think I was 4 weeks in, got COVID again. So I was sick for another 5 days. For those of you who didn't know, I had COVID early in November of the first year it was there, and I ended up in ICU. I was not looking forward to having it a second time. I asked God why it came my way, but I was going from home to PT back home, and how the heck? Must have caught it on Sylvania is the only thing I can think of. No, and then we had all that snow during that time, and I tried. I snuck out the back door while my wife was working. I had the snowblower running, and I felt this big hand on my shoulder say, "Get you back in the house." And I did exactly as she told me to do. Because I wanted to snowblow that driveway so bad. I sat around. It was just not a sitter. I can't not have some a purpose.
Chief, thank you for coming in, and I look forward to seeing you again Thursday morning.
Sorry I had to miss the
We appreciate
17th,
you
but
coming to our city staff meetings once a month.
I
Look forward to having you back on a regular basis. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a good
Chief.
evening.
Okay.
Take care.
All right, that gets us up to agenda item 6. This is the, agenda item 6 is the first of 3 street committee items, and I've already talked to the other 3 street committee members during Mr. Richardson's absence to read those, but let's have Mr. Aller start with 6A concerning the Maplewood Avenue reconstruction project.
On March 9th, we received for the Maplewood construction project. The lowest bid was Holmes & Son out of Ohio with the $1,000. Was almost 5%. Best final was put into Holmes & Sons. They have done mentioned was a portion of whole. Savings on the other. We do recommend a
We are glad Helms is there because the next bid's $100,000 more. Have there been any concerns expressed by Helms about their price, other than they left a lot of money on the table?
actually benefiting having schedule. Have one, but project, know they can.
What is the construction schedule they're committed to? What are those dates?
They're going to next Monday. And have to be by,
And Maplewood will be closed between Main Street and the railroad tracks, or are you going to keep it open some?
one-way traffic.
One way? Which way?
Going both directions. Westbound.
Very good. All right, and
I mean, I just note that these are unusual times in terms of price increases and availability, and not that I want to spend more money, but to the extent that we find ourselves squeezed on some of these projects that we're planning, I think council will be open to hearing your thoughts about that, as opposed to putting off projects that we need to get done because things cost more. Things cost more. I don't go to the grocery store very much. I was in there yesterday and I was pretty surprised.
Does come that.
all right, we do have ordinance 36, 2022, and I've asked Mr. Hanem to read this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move adoption of ordinance number 36, 2022, and I will read by title only. Accepting the bid of Helms and Sons Excavating, Inc., and awarding the contract for the Maplewood Avenue reconstruction project, same. Authorizing the expenditure for the improvements in the amount of $684,211.20. Appropriating funds therefore, and I move adoption of ordinance 36, 2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 36, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 36, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. Now we'll move on to agenda item 7, which has to do with the Monroe Street Silica Drive intersection project and the Silica Road Bridge replacement. Mr. Aller.
These projects were separate. Had the Monroe Silica Drive. Because of their close impacts to requested this portion of it, because we had two separate projects, we help with ODOT. That's what will ultimately, nothing project. Couple things have changed on the project. Actually been allocated $1 billion. Went back which is funding. Funding.
Team board did approve that at their board meeting last Wednesday. Yes.
So almost $600,000. Also went Ohio Municipal Bridge Fund. That portion down in the office and allocated. Requested additional funding on that one. Told likely on our side and our backs. All of the got it for that amount, 1 million. So about 100, about 700. Good news in that. Good news on that. This LBA agreement is
Questions for Mr. Aller?
Congratulations. Great.
Mr. Eller, is there a timeline or time frame estimated?
project will construction is approximately hoping I talked with always trying to mess hoping that we
Hearing no further questions, we do have ordinance 37, 2022 to combine these two projects, and another member of the Streets Committee, Mr. McCann, has agreed to read this one.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce title only ordinance 7- authorizing enter into an amendment to the agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Transportation on behalf of the City of Sylvania for the Monroe Street and Silica Drive intersection improvement project, the Silica Drive Bridge replacement project. I move passage of ordinance number 37-2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 37, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance 37, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Moving on to agenda item 8. Mr. Aller.
this project is one that was council authorized applying back funds back it was awarded that full amount out of $1 project. When the right time also our of the open about 100 This is actually one of the projects I can, this project process. Alton. Signal poles are all of them. Per month. This project is important for the hospital because of how far ahead we looking. 2025, as you about this signal. Not going to have project. We have been in conversation with a couple of our hospitals. The letters of interest will advertise and then at this point,
Questions for Mr. Aller?
Mr. Eller, not a question, but a comment. I spoke to quite a few members of the community last fall, and some of the residents in that area specifically brought up desire for a traffic light there. So I was happy to see this on the agenda. I think the public would support it as well.
just for my time. That's something that I've heard several times.
Okay.
And I believe it'll be a good safety improvement by aligning it with Ravine. Long time ago, we had a fatality there back when I was in high school, and that was brought up again on Facebook by the family again just the last week or two, because it was an anniversary of it. Unfortunate incident, so it'll help that situation.
Absolutely.
Just a quick
No.
question. We have the, I don't know if it's exactly a hawk signal, but we have the crossing signal that'll be going in. How does this time out with,
With that hawk signal, all of the
so they'll
Has a
all be
timer.
timed well? Okay.
we'll know if hawk signal goes, that'll kind of be everything that we're doing.
And just a comment, it's too bad we didn't have these two items while the dance troupe and everyone was here to hear all of for these.
Some of that still hasn't. Couple projects. More ready. Luckily,
He is the chair of the Transportation Committee now.
happening.
Mrs. Westfall has agreed to make this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the City Council authorize administration to begin the letter of interest solicitation for the Haroon Flower Hospital Ravine Traffic Signal Project.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize the letter of interest solicitation for this project. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Kevin, before you leave, some of you may have noticed the foundations have gone in for the Hawk signal on Haroon Road. I got excited when I saw that going in, but then Mr. Aller brought me back down. The schedule for the hard-to-get galvanized poles is out in August or so. That's disappointing, but I'm glad we're on FET's schedule and the manufacturer's schedule, and we'll get those up as soon as they're available. It's the poles that are holding up the project, not the rest of the equipment.
It's unfortunate. The good news, as you said, is that
Thank you, Mr. Aller. All right, agenda item 9, you probably took a look at this in your council packets. Governor DeWine has requested surplus, even expired body armor to be collected from police departments around the state for contribution to Ukraine forces. Chief?
On last about back that we 5 years a life with all 75%. Years gave a department last probably 5 or 6 they've kind of been piling up. We asked about perfect.
The vests do get a lot of wear in the 5 years. I'm not sure they were always worn before, but certainly I don't see an officer out on patrol without a vest on anymore. All right, with that, we do have, any questions for the chief about that request? All right, then we do have ordinance 38, 2022, authorizing this donation of the vests back to the state of Ohio. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 38-2022 and read by title only, authorizing the donation of personal protective equipment to the Ohio National Guard and the National Guard Bureau to provide equipment to the Ukrainian military, determining said property to be of no further use to the city of Sylvania. I move passage of ordinance number 38-2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 38, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance number 38, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. Chief is staying right there. We are now on to the second page of our agenda. Agenda item 10 for police data terminals, police vehicle data terminals. Chief.
So, in this year's budget, fund equipment, cars, about every year, cars much longer than purchase. Graham had mentioned costs and availability of equipment, specifically dramatically. Last year, we got a mark price of $1,000. Budget $12. Place try to buy civilian. However, Dodge is price. Change our plan a little bit. Ford did make public safety for us. Price is it is a little more critical to result will be about 11,000 over what we had before. Fortunately, we federal that will result in one call a stealth marked and currently used by the Evan, I believe. Placing trust. In addition, all of our cars are about 7 years old and tablets are probably recommendation service calling requesting to purchase of which will be like
$72,407.
72,000 on page 2.
Yep.
Cost is a little bit up on those within our budget for purchase vehicles and the probably looking at cars. Vehicles were replacing.
Before we move on to these two ordinances, I'd like council to hear the same explanation I heard. With the higher gas prices and the fuel shortage, I've gotten some comments about police vehicles running out here in the parking lot or when they're out on patrol and the officer, why don't they shut them off? And I thought it was so they'd just be ready to go, but the chief's given me a different reason that I think you ought to all hear as well, because you're gonna hear this question. Why are those vehicles left running, chief?
That's a question. Our cars are by the public, they're right. Cars have changed a lot. Last body cameras. Watch guard. All of those are basically mini. A lot of power. Cars off. Bring it down to. Especially in cars pretty. Knowledge. MDTs, which are running and their hands that have to cool or they are critical to part of the ARCOG, much of the cross. With all the address that's critical equipment, how it is. Fire up your, imagine every time you walk away from the test, you off, you have to log into the test. Times that maybe hour out.
Chief, I'm sure this is all information that I've had before, but I just can't remember top of mind. So how many cars do you have in service in any particular shift? And how many cars do you have total? Are some cars turned off, or like all the cars left
No,
on?
no.
And what is the
So
cycle?
on a typical, our typical minimum man hours. They're not all running higher shift. Officers. Could be 5 or 6. How this. Mark. A lot of tech.
Thank you, chief. We do have two ordinances to purchase the two police vehicles and the MDTs. First one is ordinance 39, 2022. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 39-2022 and read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to accept the proposal of Bauman Ford Oregon LLC for the purchase of two new 2022 Ford Police Interceptor utility vehicles for the Sylvania City Police Department, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $73,810. I move passage of ordinance number 39, 2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 39, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 39, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Now on to agenda item 10C, ordinance 40, 2022. Mr. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 40-2022 and read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to accept a proposal of D.R. Ebel for the purchase of 13 new Panasonic public sector specific Win 10 Pro mobile data terminals for the Sylvania City Police Department, appropriating funds therefore in the amount of $72,407.38. I move passage of ordinance number 40, 2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 40, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 40, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for those explanations. The next item has to do with electronic monitoring. I'm going to let Law Director Mrs. Brining discuss that one with us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This agreement was originally entered into back in September at a request by the judge and magistrate for, with the county for electronic monitoring services. That agreement required payment for 25 units at a cost of $13 per day per defendant, and then also 20 alcohol monitoring devices at a cost of $13 per day per defendant. So, and there was whether they were to be used or not. Last week, or the week before, the judge and magistrate forwarded this First Amendment, and now they have agreed to credit the court's account for any unused devices. So I would recommend its approval, and the judge and magistrate have also recommended its approval.
This is an amendment to the existing agreement.
That's correct.
All right, we do have ordinance 41, 2022. Any questions for Mrs. Brining before we proceed? If not, I've asked Lindsay Stow to read this one for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to introduce ordinance number 41-2022 and read by title only. Authorizing the mayor and director of finance to enter into a First Amendment to the agreement for electronic monitoring services, the Board of Commissioners of Lucas County, Ohio. I move for passage of ordinance number 41-2022 as an emergency measure.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 41, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries and ordinance 41, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. All right. We are now up to agenda item 12, which is a street banner requested by Lord's University. We've put similar banners up in the past. This is an application. You have a diagram of the banner attached. It does say, "Congrats, Lord's graduates." Mr. Aller, any issues with putting these up, putting them down? Are they causing any issues across Main Street?
No.
A lot of pressure on the tie downs. And the enabling legislation was passed to allow those banners. City Council chose to reserve its approval for each one of these banners. That's why we bring them back to you individually. And we do have an ordinance 42, 2022 to approve this banner. If there's no questions, I look to Mr. Hanem to read this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move adoption of ordinance number 42-2022. We'll read by title only, approving the banner application of Lord's University, authorizing the zoning administrator to indicate such approval on behalf of the city of Sylvania, and move adoption of ordinance number 42-2022 as an emergency measure.
It's been moved and seconded for passage of ordinance 42, 2022 as an emergency measure. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and ordinance number 42, 2022 is enacted as an emergency measure. All right, that takes us to agenda item 13, is a request for a new D2 wine and mixed beverages for on-premises consumption or in original sealed containers for carry out until 1 a.m. Chief Snore, any comments about this? This one is for Grumpy's on Main Street, in the Main Street block. I don't see any problems with that as well. I don't know if anybody's had any issues. There used to be a liquor license at that location. Okay. I've asked Mr. Hanson to make the motion on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to make a motion not request a local hearing for wine and mixed beverages for on-premises consumption, original steel containers for the carryout until 1 a.m. Grumpy's Global Holding.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded not to request a local hearing with the state of Ohio. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and the clerk will respond accordingly. Agenda item 14 is committee reports, and I added on there 14A. The administration has discussed the TIF that was discussed during a public meeting 2 weeks ago. And let's let Mr. Sanford come on up and discuss that a little bit more, but we'd like to proceed with that TIF, take it to the next step. We'd like to schedule a committee of the whole meeting to further discuss the TIF. There is already a committee meeting scheduled 2 weeks from tonight. That is for the Streets Committee to discuss scooter rentals from the Bird Company at 7 p.m. So we're not in a rush for this. We'd like to delay this to 2 weeks beyond that, 4 weeks from tonight, April 18th. Mr. Sanford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all the topics. Also talk about an update on
Mr. Sanford, would you like a half hour or an hour for that discussion?
I don't know that that's going to be enough.
about 5 minutes.
I think the CRA conversation is
CRAs,
pretty significant.
The CRAs, there are a lot of them, and they do not all have the same rules or origination dates. There is some explanation necessary. We'll need a map, an up-to-date map to see where all those are. We changed the boundaries of some of those a few years ago.
On our website.
Yeah.
We'll put
Yeah.
that all together. Are being used.
You know, it's interesting. This is interesting timing. Mr. Fry, our president of council, was recently saying to me how he noted that we've got several new council members at the table who might not be at all familiar with the CRAs or the TIF process. So I do think a little more than a half hour, especially with the CRAs, might be appropriate. They, I think Ms. Dow, Mr. Hanson. There's quite a few new people, so.
Properties that are qualifier. Leslie does do it.
Lucas County Auditor. Yeah, we have to provide notice to
We'll
the
look
school
forward to
board.
hearing about that at the
Yep.
meeting. That'll be
Yep.
great.
Yep.
A lot to it.
My suggestion, Mr. Mayor, is, and members of council for the committee of the whole would be to start at 6:30 on the 18th, so that gives us an hour, and I think that should be sufficient. If not, and we still need more time on some section like CRAs, then we can always circle back around on that if necessary, so.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Like to make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to have a committee of the whole to discuss possibility of a TIF for the downtown area and CRA information at 6:30 PM on April 18th.
Second.
And moved and seconded to schedule a committee of the whole meeting on Monday, April the 18th at 6:30 PM in these council chambers for the discussion of a proposed TIF and existing CRA districts. All in favor of that indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and the clerk is directed to advertise and post that meeting date. Thank you. Are there any other committee reports to be made at this time? Or committee referrals? Hearing none, and there are no information items for review tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and this council stands adjourned for 2 weeks until Monday, April 4th at 7:30 PM. Thank you all for attending.